Hello everyone, this is Genius Yoshi, and today we're going over Ursula's Return, a new set that just fully got spoiled a couple of days ago. And now's the time for me to present to you my top 10 list of the best cards of the set. Let's kick things off with number 10 on the list, BellAccomplished Mystic. Not only is the artwork spectacular on this card, but it's a 5-drop inkable, check number 1. 4/4/2 quester, check. Solid stats. Shift 3, a nice little bonus, but the core of this card is really in her ability combined with her quite decent stats line. When you play her, immediately move up to 3 damage counter from one chosen character to one of the opposing's character. So you can move damage from one of your characters, heal to deal damage to the opponent, doing a full swing of 6 points of damage. But you can also redistribute the damage from one of the opponent's character to another one, making this quite flexible. We've seen a little bit of this effect with the new Maleficent from Into the Inklands, which I guess isn't as new anymore. And I actually built a deck around this mechanic with Into the Inklands, and the mechanic's actually pretty strong, especially now that we're getting a few more characters that enter the battlefield with damage. BellAccomplished Mystic suddenly becomes a ideal 3 damage to something, and has the healing potential on top of that, which is really good. And inkable to boot makes this card number 10 slot on my top 10 list. In the number 9 slot, we have Diablo, the Devoted Herald. A non-inkable, quite unfortunately, 2/2 for 1 evasive, and that evasive is very key. You can shift it on top of an other Diablo by discarding an action card, but this is a 3-drop, so I don't see that coming into play overly often. What Diablo's really good at is his ability. During each opponent's turn, whenever they draw a card, while this card is exerted, you get to draw a card. Which means that you have this little evasive birdie that quests, gaining you 1 lore. Then you pass the turn, and immediately after, when the opponent goes to draw, boom, you get to draw a card to replace it. At that point, this is as good as the 3-drop Maleficent that drew a card while entering the battlefield. If the opponent doesn't have an answer, keep on drawing cards. And I mean, Diablo is evasive, so the opponent either needs an evasive challenger with at least 2 power, so Minnie Mouse, Stylish Surfer, not good enough, and then the opponent needs to have some removal to get rid of Diablo Devoted Herald, but at that point you've probably already drawn the card. Now the one downside is if you don't shift it, which I'd encourage you not to shift it since it only costs 3, is that the opponent can deal with it before you get the value out of the card. But then again, that means that the opponent has played something to deal with it, so they kind of treated it 1 for 1. Overall, it's a very nice card draw engine, which was missing from Emerald. I mean, Donald Duck was one of the options, but now Diablo is a good option. Actually, this 1 card per turn reminds me a bit of Tragic Hero, which must be dealt with. Now, Diablo is much cheaper, not inkable, but doesn't have the willpower to withstand damage spells. I mean, just fire the cannons and take the bird down, but otherwise, this bird can deal some really big damage by drawing you all the cards you need. I really like this card, and I think it deserves number 9 spot on the list. At number 8 on our list, we have Prince Phillip, Pourfendeur d'Ennemis, a 9-drop 6/6 with shift 6. Unfortunately, I only have the French version to display here since we're still at the end of spoiler season. But essentially, it's a 6/6 for 9, quest for 3, so fairly solid stats, super expensive though. You can shift 6, so you can put it into play for a relatively fine cost. He's evasive, so evasive with that stats line for 6, actually quite a decent deal. But where he shines is his ability. Whenever you play this character, banish all opposing characters that have at least 1 point of damage. Regeki much? So you get to banish a whole bunch of opposing characters. Now, the downside is they must have at least 1 point of damage. If they're all fully healed, well, Phil just doesn't do very much. But there's a lot of good ways to deal damage to those characters. In particular, you can think of Chief Bogo, and Prince Phil is a Floodborn character. And as you play it, Chief Bogo is going to trigger, ping all of the opponent's character for 1. Prince Phillip triggers, wipe them out. Play this after Tinkerbell, wipe out the opponent's board. Use a grab your sword, play Prince Phillip. Well, you get the gist of it. There's a lot of combos that allow it to be a completely one-sided board wipe. And I mean, be prepared 7. Phil only costs 6 if you can shift it, which means you must have some other stuff in play, but a one-sided board wipe is extremely powerful. And that's how Prince Phillip got to number 8 on my list. I don't think this is a card that's going to go in every deck, but when it hits pretty hard. Also, even if you don't have a combo to set up, if there's just the odd character that the opponent has that has a point of damage, well, it's still almost a Maleficent's Dragon. And I mean, he's a 3-questing evasive 6/6. Still pretty solid, right? Anyways, good enough for me. Good enough for number 8 on my tier list. Number 7, we have Foris Spere, a 1-drop item, and when you play it, you draw a card. This is very similar and redundant with Popsicles. And really the strength of the card is that it's super cheap to put in play, replaces itself. So you're essentially thinning your deck. And with 4 Foris Spears and 4 Popsicles, you now have 8 targets for Hiram Flaversham to eat and just give you 2 cards in exchange, which is pretty strong. And it's good for item type synergies. And it's also has a deck thinning type of effect. It does have second ability. I mean, you can pay 1, sacrifice it, which is nice. The ability to self-sacrifice it with something like Tamatoa that can pick it back up afterwards is positive effect. And you can give one of your characters bodyguard. You can do some shenanigans with Bella Hidden Archer or the King of Atlantis. But really, that's not the core of why this card is good. It's good because it's a cantrip item that replaces itself and goes well with item matters, goes well with Flaversham, and simple, it's good. It's number 7. In number 6 here, I'm going to go and cheat a little bit and mention the nice broom support in 2 parts. First one is Yensid, powerful sorcerer, 1/3 for 2. Okay stats, but when you play it, if you have a broom character, draw a card. Alright, already that's decent. But if you have 2 or more brooms in play, then suddenly he's a 3-quester. And that's essentially an inkable Pinocchio with more willpower that draws you a card when it enters the battlefield. And when you look at it that way, it's oh so amazing. Downside is you do have to play some brooms. I'm not sure that the broom side of things are good enough to go with the Yensid support. But Yensid in itself, assuming you have very good brooms, is a fantastic card. And on the second half of number 6, we have Mickey Mouse Playful Sorcerer, 3/4, shift 3, 2-quester with resist 1, so quite fair stats line. When you play it, you deal damage to chosen character equals the number of brooms you have in play, 2 or 3 brooms. This is just a devastating card. I mean, solid stats line that pings out one of the opponent's character. So delicious. So with Mickey Mouse and Yensid, we now have some very seriously good support for brooms. All that remains are the brooms good enough to go with that awesome support? I'm not sure they are right now, but these support cards are going to be there permanently, and as we add more brooms, who knows just how powerful the archetype is going to get. In number 5, we have Gaston, the Despicable Dealer. 2/4, quest for 1 for 3. Slightly decent defensive stats. And his ability, you can exert him and you'll pay 2 less for the next character you play this turn. Lantern's already good. I was already having a lot of fun playing Doc as a 2/3 for 3. Now, Doc does do this while questing, and it's not just the ability. But Gaston allows you to give a 2-point discount with more willpower than Doc, which means that on turn 4 you get to play one of your 6 drops. And just all that jump from Gaston up to a 6-drop, and even the redundancy with Doc. Now you can go Lantern, Doc, Gaston, and basically skip 4 drops, maybe even 5 drops, and go straight from the early game to the late game type of characters in a reliable way. And I think that makes Gaston quite a despicable threat, and it's going to empower a lot of these heavy amber style ramp decks. Nothing much more to say about this. It's just good ramp. Too early. In number 4, we have Ursula, the Sea Witch Queen. I mean, she's the legendary Ursula from the Ursula themed set, so she better brings a bit of a punch, and she does. So she's a 7-drop inkable, 4/7 quest for 3. Pretty solid stats, on the expensive side, but you get a shift 5, which is on par with a good value for these types of cards. And whenever she quests, you can exert one of the opponent's character, which is a pretty good ability, especially on something that's hard to remove. We did have Elsa in the first chapter do some of that, and she saw some play, but not that much play. Why? Because she kept on getting trampled down on the backswing. Much harder to trample down a 4/7. So the Sea Witch Queen can establish solid control, and it's whenever she quests. And you gain 3 lore when you do that. So you can establish full control while still questing to victory at the same time. And that's not enough, because as long as you have Ursula, the Sea Witch Queen, opponents can't can't sing songs, basically. So they can't sing songs with characters. Whole new world out of nowhere? I don't think so. You're playing a lot of songs? Well, you're now going to have to pay ink for those, which you really don't want to do. So it's a nice oppressive ability on top of an already solid stats with good base ability character. What's not to like? Ursula, Sea Witch Queen, just a nice inclusion as a top end character. If you're playing some cheaper Ursulas and get a shift 5, she's going to be an almost auto include. So watch out for these Emerald Amethyst Ursula decks coming during Ursula's return. So coming back, staying? I think they're already in the metagame. Anyways, Ursula. This brings us to number 3 on our list. Hey, the Clumsy Rooster. Alright, what does this thing do? Well, I don't read German, so I'm going to look at the translation of the card, which unfortunately I don't have the English version right now. But whenever you play this character, if an opponent has more cards in their inkwell than you, you take the top card of your deck, put it in the inkwell face down, and exert it. This is basically a conditional Mickey Mouse detective. You need the opponent to have more cards in ink, which typically happens if you're going second, and then you're going to be playing your hey as a Mickey Mouse detective just ramping up. I'm already a big fan of Mickey Mouse detective, but its biggest problem is that he's uninkable, and it always bites you in the mid to late game. Hey resolves that problem. Hey is inkable. So he also packs better stats. He's 2/3, quest for 2, so he's a threat. He has a bit of power. He is inkable. He just covers off all the weaknesses of Mickey Mouse Detective, but has the downside that you can only really use him if you're going second, or otherwise you're skipping a turn of inkability, maybe in the late game when the ink stops being equal. You can still get some value out of hey. As a catch-up card, I think he's fantastic. If you know you're going second, you just think it. There's no problem there. So I really like this card, and I'm almost assuredly going to be playing a bunch of Clumsy Roosters in a lot of decks coming near you on my channel. Hoping my channel is near you, near your mind. And yes, I just placed a chicken on top of a mega scary Ursula, hoping that there's no backlash. In my comments below, do put positive stuff or backlash the rooster, whichever you feel is appropriate. We finally reached the runner-up, number 2 on the list, Ariel, Sonic Warrior, 3/8 for 6, 2 quester. Pretty solid stats line, to be honest. Shift 4, so you can play her much cheaply on top of a cheaper Ariel. Hopefully a cheaper. I mean, you can play her on top of a more expensive Ariel, but why would you do that? Her ability, whenever you play a song, you may pay 2 to deal 3. So you get a discounted smash without costing you a card whenever you sing a song. All right, well, typically when you sing a song, you're exerting your character, so you have ink available. So it really becomes easy to activate this ability as long as you have a singer. And I mean, Ariel the Sonic Warrior can sing pretty much anything as a 6-drop. Also, we already have Ariel the 3-drop Spectacular Singer. That is a nice Songs Matter type of card. So we have a shifting target with benefits as she enters the battlefield already being played. And what is she played in? Well, Amber Steel Songs. This is a steel card. She fits right into Amber Steel Songs, which is one of my personal favorite archetype and one of the strongest archetypes in the metagame. And I think Ariel Sonic Warrior fits right into this deck, brings in a lot of power, a lot of removal style ability, a sturdy body on the battlefield, and does a very good job at a lot of things that the deck was missing, honestly. And not that it really was missing anything, just overall a pretty powerful deck. And yeah, I mean, this is the Ursula's team set, and her nemesis Ariel is just as powerful and deserved the number 2 spot on the list. Which brings us to the top spot. My top spot on the list is We Don't Talk About Bruno. Why? Well, it's a 5-costed song that bounces back a character to that player's hand, and then that player has to discard a card at random. Okay. Well, why is this good? We already have Mother Knows Best. That's just a bounce that's cheaper. First of all, this is inkable. Inkable 5-drops are pretty good. It's a song, which means that you can have access to this removal spell without actually having to pay the full ink cost. And singing for 5 is not that hard, really. We've seen it with A Whole New World, Grab Your Sword. It's relatively easy to do. Or with Let It Go. Actually, I want to compare this card to Let It Go, because it's a 5-drop song that allows you to remove an opponent's character. Let It Go is already pretty solid. But with Let It Go, you're giving the opponent the character in ink. With this card, you're giving the character back in hand, but then forcing the opponent to discard a card. And basically, that's the difference between We Don't Talk About Bruno and Mother Knows Best. When you're playing Mother Knows Best, you're bouncing a card back in hand, and it's costing you 1 card. So you're essentially down in material. It's costed you 1 card to play it. But when we're playing We Don't Talk About Bruno, the opponent still has to discard a card. So you're getting some tempo by removing a threat from the battlefield, ideally without paying any ink because you're singing, and you're neutral on cards because it costs you 1 card to get rid of one of your opponent's cards. So you've gained a lot of tempo on the battlefield. With this song, you now have access to this removal that, well, first of all, you can play it on top of the Mother Knows Best. And since it's inkable, you can just ink it. I mean, no downside. It's a versatile removal that's even on cards, which is really strong, and doesn't really give the opponent any benefit. And discarding a card at random can completely mess up your opponent. It's not the choose a card, it's really at random. Overall, really like this. Emerald didn't have good removal before Mother Knows Best was the one. This is better than Mother Knows Best in most situations and gives some good removal opportunities to Emerald, which it lacked severely. And that is why We Don't Talk About Bruno makes its way to the number 1 spot on my list. So we'll talk a lot about the stuff we don't talk about, apparently. So I hope that you've enjoyed my top 10 list. Don't forget to thumbs up the video. Tell your friends to go and watch it so you can talk about the cards you like the most and cards you don't like the most. And if you want to talk to me about it, leave a comment below telling me what you agree with, what you disagree with, what would be your top 10 list of cards from Ursula's Return. And what omissions have I made from the list that I should have included and glanced over and said, yeah, that's not good enough. Let me know, and I hope that you've enjoyed the video, you've had fun watching it, and I will see you next time.